Of course, the heat's going to kick on now. It doesn't sound like it's been running all day, but here we are. Look at me, I'm black on black today. You barely see me, I'm like a ghost here. Outstanding. How's everybody doing tonight? Getting everything together so we can have our talk tonight about the ZOZO. Pretty wild. I'm starting to realize why I wear green when I do this, or different colors, because the black on black is just weird looking. Let's see. Welcome. We're going to be having a nice discussion tonight. How's everybody doing? Okay? Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you there. Let me see. I'm going to see if I can adjust my brightness a little bit on the screen. So just bear with me. There we go. Nice and bright. Now I can see me. Hi, Dawn. How are you? So, how's everybody feeling about tonight, ZOZO? Very interesting topic. A lot of people responded to this pretty well, so I'm excited about the topic. I'm excited about the conversation. In front of me, I have my handy-dandy Ouija board that I was using the other night, and I took this one out specifically to use for this conversation because of the first couple times that we did a live Ouija board together. Back October, November, into December and stuff when I first started, this board actually was giving me a lot of responses, and it was part of the reason why I looked to find another board. And part of it was the ZOZO phenomenon. And we're going to go over a lot of stuff tonight, so I hope you enjoy the conversation. First off, I want to say thanks to everybody who watches. I appreciate it. If you're watching now, do me a favor and hit the old share button. I completely appreciate all the shares that everybody gives me. It's really cool. When you do that for me, I always tell you it costs a ton of money to advertise on Facebook. So when you share and your friends see it and they like my page, it does a lot for me. You guys are number one for me. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to start. Yesterday, I went to my favorite place to get some coffee, the Wawa, and one of the people who watches the quote unquote program that I do here was talking to me about the Ouija board, and she was like, "Oh, I can't use a board." And I said, "Well, why can't you use a board?" And she said, "Because every time I do, this AZ spirit takes the board over." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Do you know what that is?" And she was just like, "No, what?" And I said, "Well, that is part of what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday, so I don't know if she's going to be joining us or not. I hope so." But I said AZ is one of the variations of ZOZO. And if you guys have been following along on my paranormal discussion page, you'll see that we have been posting some videos, specifically one from the Ghost Adventures team. They did a whole hour-long episode on ZOZO. It was really cool. Some people said that they don't like watching that video because of the interaction and stuff that they may have had, or the fear they had from that. So who else? Then somebody else on the paranormal discussion page says, "Oh, I had a run-in with somebody that was ZAZ." And that is the same spirit, ZOZO. And it goes by many names. I wrote down some of them. ZOZO, AZAZ. Sometimes it comes through as Mama, Zaz, and sometimes, what is the other one? Pazuzu. And that's a really old demon from back in the day. Hi, Big Ant. How are you? Nice to see everybody. Tammy's here. Hi, Tammy. Brenda's here. Hi, Brandy. Brenda. Hi, who else here? Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Catherine. Oh, hi, Catherine in New Jersey. Welcome. Carlene is here. Brenda, always here. I'm going to say her name, Sorimal. I think that's right. Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk. Cisco's here, too, if I didn't say. How you doing? So, let's get down to it. Has anybody ever experienced ZOZO? If you have ever used a Ouija board and experienced ZOZO, do me a favor. Hit the like button and let me know. Because this is something that is very interesting. It's a phenomenon, right? And a phenomenon means that it happens to a lot of people. It's not an isolated incident. So, what happened is it was happening for a long time across the world, right? And we had no way to connect the stories because obviously everybody lives very far away from each other, and you probably weren't going to call your friend and be like, "Hey, I was using the Ouija board and the strangest thing happened," unless the friend had a mutual like of the Ouija board and would have liked to heard that story. Well, come the internet, people start sharing all of their stories, and all of a sudden this phenomenon arises where everybody's like talking about ZOZO. They have stories to tell, and they are very similar. And here's how the story usually goes. This is how the story usually goes. And I'm going to use the Ouija board for like a prop, okay? So they'll be using the board, and a spirit will come through, and it starts off nice answering questions. And if you guys watch my program on Fridays, you know that sometimes we get really nice answers from spirits, and they seem very friendly and talkative, inquisitive, and they want to talk, and they want to kind of be your friend, right? And they'll be like, hey, how are you? We'll use Steve from Friday, right? Hey, I'm Steve, and I'm funny, da-da-da, right? And maybe he gives you a tragic story, which is something I told you guys that you got to watch for if you're going to use the Ouija board. They'll lure you in with like a sad story, right? And it could be a possible trick. You don't want to get involved in that kind of stuff. You don't feed into it. And I always say that. You don't feed into whatever you're picking up. It's interesting to use, but you don't want to feed into it. And here's why. So let's say Steve says, I fell down a well and I died. I was 14 when I passed away. And for like 2 weeks, you talk to this alleged spirit, Steve. And then all of a sudden, Steve starts to get a little mean and a little angry with you. And he starts being vulgar and telling you mean, nasty things. F you, I hope you die, I'm gonna come get you, da-da-da, all these like crazy mean things, right? And then all of a sudden, the board starts taking over and it starts going Z, A, Z, and it moves in this rainbow pattern every time. And if you go back to some of my old Friday night things, you'll see I was using this board and it was doing that, and I would say, I know who you are and you had better stop. And it was doing that. Z-A, Z, or it would do, what was the other one it kept doing? It kept doing M-A, it would go M-A, M-A, right? And that was maybe that spirit. And they will always start off nice, and it will always start off as a good guy or a good spirit. And then it kind of works its way into that ZOZO kind of thing. And one of the things that people talk about with ZOZO is they get the spirit kind of comes into their life, and then they have a run of bad health, bad luck, and bad things happen. So that's kind of strange, right? I personally think that one time, a long time ago, when I was a younger man, probably I was about 26 or so it's probably about 10 years ago, I was using a board with one of my friends that I was in the military with, and I was being stupid. I gotta tell you, I was being an idiot. I was having a couple drinks, which I always say don't do, but you know, when you're young and dumb, that's what happens. And it started doing that, and it kept telling us, we kept moving the planchette back and forth, telling us when we were going to die, and that's crazy. Obviously nothing came of it because I'm here, and it had told me I was going to die very close to when I was using the board. So you know, it was one of those things, but it kept saying ZA, ZA, and it was this board that I was using. So I don't know if there is something maybe attached to this board, but there is always that possibility. So one of the things that I think is really awesome is every time I talk about ZOZO to people, they're very interested, and I think that this is an awesome topic. So we're going to talk a little bit. I have my notes right here that I had written down. So let's see. We're going to talk really quick about maybe what ZOZO is, okay? Some people think it's a demon. Some people think it's a talpa, T-A-L-P-A, which is kind of an older spirit, or something else that I often mention is a jinn, and it's D-J-I-N-N, and that is an old spirit, and or a mischievous ghost, or it could be something else. And this is the non-paranormal explanation. It could be your ideomotor skills. So basically what happens is, and this is like, you know, what the whole Ouija board is kind of based off of. They say that just by putting your hands on the planchette, you have very fine motor skills that maybe you're not completely aware of. And when you put your hands on here, your mind, unknowingly to your conscious mind, moves this around and gives you answers. Now, that's the ideomotor effect, and that is you moving the stuff around unbeknownst to your conscious mind, okay? So is ZOZO a phenomenon that we all kind of have inside of us? Can anybody connect? Maybe. It's one of those things that we're going to get to the bottom of it. It's one of the reasons why I really like using a Ouija board, because it gives a little bit of insight for me, and I get to use it and show you folks who may not want to put your hands on a Ouija board for the reasons of being afraid of it or having an issue with it. I totally understand that. Carlene just asked a very good question. It's one of the things that is a big question for the ZOZO phenomenon. Carlene says, could it be more than one spirit? Yeah, absolutely. It could be more than one spirit. There's no doubt about it. So we don't know. Personally, like doing my mediumship, this is how I see things. If I do a reading for you, and Grandma comes and she talks, she will bring Uncle Bob, and Uncle Bob could bring a childhood friend, and that friend could bring somebody else, and it's all interwoven like that, right? So it's a big circle of people that you personally know. Do spirits talk to each other on the other side? Do the spirits, are they in on a big joke? Do they like to mess with the living and be mischievous? I can tell you this, ghosts for sure like to play jokes on the living, that's for sure. They definitely do things that I would say are antagonistic when they want attention. So is ZOZO just like a form that they use to, kind of mess with people using a Ouija board? I don't know. Maybe. And if I want everybody, while you're doing this, please do me a favor. If you just joined in, hit the share button, please. That helps tremendously. And in the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit more about ZOZO. And if you missed it earlier, I was talking about a young woman who came to my attention, and she told me that she had a run-in with AZ. And I said that, that is part of the ZOZO phenomenon. And it could come in as Mama, or let's see, ZAZ. Somebody else had mentioned that it came in like that. OZ, or ZOZO. All of those are different names for the same entity or the same being. And I don't know if anybody gave any, if you were over on the paranormal discussion page, if you read any of the stories that we had posted up or any of the videos about ZOZO. I really want to give a couple different points of view before we came here and talked about it tonight. So let's see, what else do I want to talk about? There is a paranormal investigator, and his name is Darren, I just lost it, Darren Evans, okay? Darren used the Ouija board, and he came across the ZOZO entity. And he reported that after using that, this entity, quote-unquote, stalked him and his family, and it caused him to have a nervous breakdown. It ended in him in the hospital, and I believe, and I'll have to fact check this again because I didn't write it down, but I think his young daughter also ended up in the hospital. Now, one of the questions I have to ask is that something that, if you believe hard enough, is it bringing it on to you? Is your intention not proper, and it is bringing you that kind of bad luck and you're letting it affect you? What do you guys think? If you want to type in an answer like, yes, your intention affects it, or no, this actually could be a demon, or some other entity, type that in there. Let me know. Hi, Arlene. Nice to see you there. Everybody's joining me. Thank you very much. Catherine says, my husband broke the board up. Why do you do that, Catherine? If you have a cool story, I'd like to hear it. Especially if it's related to ZOZO. I'd love to hear that story. So yeah, I'd really like to know if you guys have a personal opinion. Do you think that a spirit that comes across on the Ouija board, spirit board, or any other device has the ability to affect us in a way that could send us to the hospital or make us sick, or bring us any bad luck, so to speak? Brenda says, I think it's a demon. Hey, it could be. And you'd have to believe in that kind of thing, I think, for it to affect you, right? Arlene was the winner of our psychic book about 2 weeks ago. Thanks. I'm really glad that you like that book. It's a really good book. Danielle says, we have one. It's always the same spirit. Danielle, what's the name that the spirit gives you? If you don't mind saying it, that would be cool. Catherine says, no one else would use it. That's why your husband broke the board up. The planchette moved on its own. That's interesting. Like I said, I've used this for a number of years, and I've never seen the planchette move on its own. I've been doing paranormal investigations for a little bit. Been doing my thing with the paranormal for a long time. I've never seen anything like a planchette move on its own. I do have a cool story, but it's not related to ZOZO about something moving, and my daughter kind of laughing at me because she told me so. Joel says, yes, if I feel they don't know what they're doing. Oh, Albert is the name of the spirit that always comes through. Does he have anything interesting to tell you when he does come through? Is he vulgar? Is he a nice guy? What does he have to say? And this is all, again, if you have any opinion on, do the spirits that we contact on the Ouija board, do those spirits have any reign over us? Can they affect our life? Tell me. I would love to know that. Ours is never moving on its own, but it moves right away. Yeah, that's another really good point that I'm going to get to here. So a lot of times, people report when they connect to ZOZO that we go from moving slowly across the board for answer to answer to the ZOZO is very effective at moving the planchette, and it moves it in a very sharp and precise manner with a lot of strength. If you watch me use the board, it does move fast when I use it on Fridays. Sometimes I kind of get the information before it goes through to the board, but it does move very fast when I use it, no matter what the spirit is. If I happen to come across a ZOZO, I would be I personally would try to be careful with that. I don't want anything to come and affect my family in a negative way, because I personally do believe that once you let something in that you don't want, especially if it's something powerful and has a lot of how can we put this, if 20 people believe in one thing, it has some power, but if 100,000 people believe in something, it has a tremendous amount of power. So if it has a tremendous amount of power behind it, I wouldn't want it to stay with me. And Danielle says her spirit belongs to her grandfather, and his name is Albert, and he gives them protection. Tells them to be careful about things. That's cool. That's a good thing. That could just be a guide using the board. So the older board that I used, that I received as a gift, the woman who used it was using it for that kind of thing. She would use it to connect spirit guides. So that board gives me a lot of good information, and it's very powerful. Just because it's been used so much, has a lot of energy. It hasn't yet to connect really anything to something I would call negative. What do you tell this bad spirit? Perfect. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about too. When a ZOZO, if that identifies itself on your Ouija board, you immediately are going to want to say goodbye to that. And there are some, I guess, I don't know, unwritten rules or something that say if you say goodbye to it and scroll across, again, I'm glad I took out the Ouija board. So if ZOZO presents itself to you and you're using this board, you can say, I'm done talking to you, and scroll across the goodbye, and it'll have to leave. I don't know how that works, if that's a real thing. I don't find, I mean, I do that just as like a way to like cut the connection, right? But I don't know if something that strong would listen to you on that one. And that's one of the things that is very interesting too, that I want to talk about. Is the ZOZO spirit, the demon or whatever it is, the reason why so many people are afraid of using a Ouija board? You know what? I can't tell you how many messages I get from people who watch me use I can't tell you how much I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Wow, I'm really losing my train of thought. Let me go back to where I was, because I read something and it kind of stopped me for a second. Okay, so the board is the ZOZO spirit, the thing that keeps us from using the board. It could be. And why do people give the Ouija board so much power? Is it because most people don't understand the way that it works? Maybe. For me, it doesn't bother me. And somebody just who watches on Friday said, Melanie says, I watched when Steve came through the board. That night I had a dream that I was standing in front of a gray sheet and an image of a scary face was pressed against it. So one of the things, and I kind of jokingly put this forward, and I think that I'm really going to have to put it forward from now on, especially as the audience grows for these sorts of things, is I may have to put a warning out, because I did receive several messages about being afraid from watching this. So it will only have power if you give it power. So that's why if you watch my older videos, when the board started doing ZA or ZO or whatever it was doing, I recognized it quickly and said, no, you're not coming in to speak with me. And it's one of the reasons why we set an intention before we use the board. So a lot of people are very afraid of this board, and a lot of things that, you know, obviously Hollywood has a lot to do. There's a ZOZO movie. There's another one. I got the chills just thinking about it. I want you to, if you have the opportunity, look up the Bye Bye Man. That is another thing. And if you notice, this spirit comes through on the Ouija board, and he calls himself the Bye Bye Man. So he has this repetitiveness, just like ZOZO, right? There's a repetitiveness to it. Why? It's interesting to know that. So Christina Kimmel says, I won't use a Ouija board myself, but I am comfortable watching you. Well, that's exactly why I do it, because I want to spread a little bit of awareness about how this board works and the things that can come through. And one of the most important things is when the negative stuff does come in, it's important to know how to handle yourself to make sure that you're not going to let it affect your life. And there are a lot of people who don't do that. I think that that's one of the things, like, you know, you sit around and you try to get scared. You sit in the dark with the candles with your friends at when you're younger, at a slumber party or whatever, and you're using the Ouija board, and all of a sudden something negative gets a hold, and then you don't know what to do. And that's where people find that fear or whatever. And then like I was saying earlier, a lot of people send me messages that I don't really talk about it too much. They'll be like, oh, you're letting the devil in, da-da-da, you're using the Ouija board, it's terrible. But for everybody who has been watching me on Fridays, up until this Friday, nothing remarkable or extraordinary has ever happened using the Ouija board. And what did happen was not an account of the Ouija board doing anything. If you watched me, when the second spirit came through on Friday, I stopped using the Ouija board because I realized that this entity was very strong, and it would need me to write everything down on my paper and do like kind of a proper reading, or how I would do if I was at a paranormal investigation. I would not use a Ouija board for that. I would turn to my natural ability and listen. So that's one of those things that is really important, and that's, again, why we do this, why we're here to learn. So let's see. Lorraine says, I always say a little white light prayer when I start watching. That's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. And I think that I'm going to have to start opening on Fridays with a disclaimer of, like, you know, don't watch this if you think that you're going to be affected, or if you're easily affected, or become afraid, because I don't want anybody saying that I'm the reason that they're afraid or scared. You obviously always have the chance to keep scrolling on Facebook and not mess with Friday nights. That's fine. And usually Tuesdays are usually a pretty light night, but I really thought this was important in light of the things that were going on, and it sort of kind of put itself into my periphery as far as a topic, so I thought it would be really good to talk about it. Dawn Marie says, I believe the negativity is based on fear. I absolutely believe in that. And that's why I talked a couple weeks ago on a Tuesday about eliminating fear. Once you start eliminating fear from being able to do things like what I do in this kind of capacity, you will connect to the light way more often than anything that's dark. What? Mel says, don't say it, don't think it for the Bye Bye Man. I don't know why. Why is that? What does that mean? If you don't, listen, if you guys are watching this and you don't know what the Bye Bye Man is, do yourself a favor. Go look it up on the internet. It's actually one of the most frightening ghost stories I've ever read. And it's from somebody who I think is pretty credible. So read about it. Just read about the experience, not the lore behind it. If you read about the experience first and then the lore, you'll understand a little bit better. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the lore of ZOZO, okay? So I read that ZOZO was a name given over 2,100 years ago to one of 3 demons that was possessing somebody. And I'm going to spell the town out. Teilly. There was a demonic possession in this town, and there were 3 demons possessing that gave their name. The first one was Mimi, M-I-M-I. The next one was I'm gonna mess this up, but it's Crapole. It's spelled exactly like that. C-R-A-P-O-U-L-E-T. And then the third was ZOZO, and that was 2,100 years ago. So then they connect this sort of with this Pazuzu, which is a very strong underworld demon. I think it's super fascinating that even in the modern world that we live in, we can connect this information to things that happened over 2,000 years ago. So what do you guys think about all that kind of stuff, all the ZOZO? And I'm hoping you guys have some stories for me. Any of it, even if it's just like a hey, in college we used it and that happened, or something like that. I'd really like to hear that. It's kind of part of the discussion part of the video. Catherine says, when I do work, I always say in the light of God. That's good. That's part of a protection thing for all of us that do this kind of work, right? Yes, Lorraine, that's very correct. If everybody scrolls up and sees what Lorraine said, she said, I still feel people get obsessed with the board and let the bad things in. That's true. That is very true, because what happens is it's easy to get hung up on the negative stuff. And so for some reason, it's just like anything. The news sells bad news because it sells better, right? We're more interested in the bad than the good stuff. So if a little boy was like, like if somebody elderly passed away, we'll say, they're not as interesting to listen to as somebody who says that they got murdered, or somebody who got, drowned, or something a little more out of the ordinary for a way of passing, right? So we would listen to that, especially if it's going to come through for us on this piece of cardboard with the plastic, right? And I always say, like, right, if you don't own a Ouija board, I'll show you the back of it too. It's even got like a little lot number on the back. It's cardboard. It's stiff cardboard with printing on the front, right? This one in particular happens to glow in the dark, so it's pretty interesting. If you use it under a black light, it looks really cool. So it's just it's just whatever power you give it. Danielle up here says, is it true that you should always burn a white candle while playing for protection? No, I don't think that you'd have to do that. I don't ever do that when I use it on Fridays. I don't think that it would lend any help. White candles are symbolic of helping spirits move on. So if you were in the business of doing that, you could burn a white candle, but I don't think that you need to do it while you're playing with the Ouija board. Dawn says, does a homemade Ouija board have the same power? Yes, it does. As a matter of fact, I haven't gotten to it yet because the weather is really bad here still in New Jersey, but I have it right here. This huge one that my buddy Larry made for me. This, right now, it just looks like a kitchen cutting board, but hopefully in the next month or so, when the weather gets nicer, this is going to turn into something awesome. We're going to paint the letters on it. We're going to give it some nice designs around the side. And it's going to really look a lot more like a Ouija board. And if you guys saw my post, somebody with an Etsy store liked one of my posts, and I checked her Etsy store out, and she does these amazing planchettes. They're a little expensive, so I got to save up some cash to get one. But once I do, I'm going to attach it and use it for this board that I have over here. Mel says, this video is glitching out like crazy for me. I apologize if it's glitching out. My Wi-Fi is nice and strong where I am. So I don't know if it's on your end or whatever, but it's interesting. Christina says, you could buy one in Toys R Us. Don't think that Jeffrey is giving it power. Nah, it's definitely all about your own use. So that's why when you use it, it's very important to be responsible, right? It's like anything. And I always use the chainsaw analogy for myself. Like, chainsaws for some reason freak me out. I don't like using one. I like to give it to somebody else, because I'm always afraid to use it and it'll bounce back and hit me. and kill me or something wild like that. Who knows? It's the same thing for this. You got to be responsible. So if you're not comfortable using it, don't, because then you can potentially let something in that you don't want to let in. Right, Dawn says the power of intention. That's exactly right. So when you guys watch me use this bad boy on Fridays, you know that I say I'm not going to let anything low level in, and I only want to speak to good human spirits using the Ouija board. So let's see. What do you do if you come across ZOZO? One, don't give it any power, okay? Again, you'll know if ZOZO is talking to you because it'll start off nice, and it'll talk to you nicely. It'll pretend. That's the big thing that I've come across in all this. I've read about 30 stories in the last week and a half since I've said we're going to talk about this. ZOZO always starts off nice. It always starts off as another spirit. It's usually something very benevolent, like a little boy or a little girl that had a sad passing, because it wants to hook you in. It wants to get you emotionally involved in the story. Okay, once it starts doing that, then it's got you hooked. And this is one of the things that I always tell you guys on Fridays. We can look into some of the things that comes across in the board. I think one of the first ones was like the little Native American boy who allegedly followed me from upstate New York from an investigation I had done up there. You can get into it a little bit, but you don't want to get emotionally involved, because once you start putting that energy right here, this is your heart chakra, once this energy starts getting attached to it, it's kind of got its hooks in you, right? Because, and I think I could speak for all of us, I have some little kids, and I always, put them up on Instagram, right? If they were in trouble, I would be obviously emotionally involved to try to help them. And the same thing if it was somebody else's children. If a little kid was lost, I would emotionally be invested in helping a child find its home. So it's the same thing, except for you can't see what's actually talking to you on this board. So if it gets you hooked and you keep coming back, it could take weeks. This is like not a slow process, or a fast process rather. This could take weeks of things happening. So you can get involved, and it'll be like, oh, come back and talk to me tomorrow. And all of a sudden you kind of think you have a friend or somebody you can talk to on the other side of this board, and you're not sure as to what it is. Then what happens is what we were talking about like in the beginning of the video is it'll start being vulgar with you, and you'll be like, hey, and I'm going to use Steve again. Hey, Steve, why are you being such a jerk to me? We were hitting it off, we were getting along. And then it'll start saying mean, nasty things to you. It'll start saying it wishes you were dead. It'll say I'm cursing you. It'll say things like, I don't know, F you, and all these, like, whatever you can think of that would really bother you in particular are the things that it would say to you, okay? So then what happens? You start getting like, okay, who is this really? Now, you've been emotionally, I want you to come along this journey with me, right? You're emotionally involved. Steve is now being a jerk to you. And you're like, hey, Steve, what's your problem, man? I've been trying to help you out. We were talking, you had this good rapport, right? And now, all of a sudden, he's not being nice anymore. So what does that do to you? It puts you on the defensive. And what happens? Your demeanor changes. Your energy will change. It's what happens. You go on the attack, especially as an adult. And you definitely are not going to want to be challenged. Or, more importantly, I think that you probably wouldn't want to be made a fool. So now you're going to go on the offensive with this thing. And guess what happens? It's going to go ahead and it's going to tell you who it is. This is what happens next. Well, I'm not Steve. Where are we at here? Right? Just start doing this nonsense. Big rainbow across the board. Z. O. Z. O. Just like that. As a matter of fact, as I'm doing that, the board is kind of getting warm, so I'm going to stop. I don't like that. It's strange. I'm not giving it any power, but I think it's very strange. I see that somebody's having some problem with their thing. If you want, just click off the video and then come back. That might help your feed out a little bit. And I see that there's a lot of people making comments. Can't wait to see your new Ouija. Thanks. Do you feel they attach to the weak? Dawn. Dawn says, do you feel that they attach to the weak? I think that they have a better chance at attaching to the emotionally vulnerable. Okay, so that's exactly what I was talking about. If you feel that you are helping somebody and you get emotionally invested in them, just like any kind of relationship, and then that person turns into a jerk on you, you will become defensive. And you will lash out at them, and then that gives them the energy they need. It's a fight. Now you've raised your energy to a different spot. You're no longer like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me help you. Now you're being attacked, so you got to kind of take your claws out and fight with it a little bit. And that's what this thing likes, confrontation. So what are some of the other things that are going to happen once you start seeing that this entity is coming through? Well, again, I don't think that I've had too much of a connection with it. I think a little bit, but not to the degree some people report. One of the things that people report is that they start seeing shadows. For anybody who watches me on Friday nights, you know that I do Ouija in a very well-lit area. I do it in my living room. My wife is always present. She's always, and if she is not with me in the living room next to me, I'm down here in our basement, and she's just right up a little set of stairs here. So if I feel that I need some help, I can ask. And you guys, I think that's a safety. It's a good safety net. I would never do this home alone by myself because you don't know how the energy is going to affect you. And that's the next part of it. So you might start seeing shadows and stuff. Shadows and things like that. And other people say that they start to feel scared, uneasy, and upset. And that's definitely one of the things. Now, I want you guys, if you didn't watch on Friday, I want you to go to Friday session, because you got a little bit of a taste of what it looks like when something really jumps. The entity, Dan, that came through for the angel who was watching our video, he gave me a run for my money. As a matter of fact, I was just telling somebody earlier that I'm still kind of shaking that off. I wasn't expecting such a strong reaction from myself. It was very powerful. Now, I can't imagine if you were using a board by yourself and that sort of energy came into you, into your sphere. So listen, a lot of people think that these entities like enter into your body. Sometimes they do. That's channeling. That's part of mediumship sometimes. But your energy bubble, your aura, so to speak, is all the way out here. Sometimes they can fill up an entire room, and people don't realize that. So these spirits can really influence the outer layers of your energy, and they can really get into your psyche. So one of the things, like, if you've ever been to a medium or a psychic, right, they might say, like, oh, I see race cars around you. I see the word teacher is around you. I see the word Marianne written over your head. Well, they're looking at your aura, and this stuff is projected from your inner energy, and it gives us the chance to see these things. Well, guess what happens? Outside influences can also come in and influence it backwards. Okay? So that's something that you need to pay attention to, and it's one of the reasons why we say you don't use the board by yourself. It can definitely influence you. And not so, again, I have to tell you, it's not the actual board that is influencing you. It's the intention of letting something influence you. Being emotionally vulnerable, and believing everything that this thing says. But remember, it's cardboard. You can toss it in the trash. It's nothing. You can burn it. It don't matter. It's just cardboard. It's your intentions. Okay? Kat says, what attracts you to the negative spirits? The fact that they conjure negative thoughts and feelings within you while you talk to them proves my point. I'm just curious why you'd want to speak to this type of entity. Kat, I don't particularly gravitate towards anything that's negative. However, I do feel that it is important to be very educated on the topic of everything on the good side and everything on the dark side. So last Tuesday we talked about some angels, and we didn't go too in depth because there is a lot to it, but I am aware of the good side. I'm aware of spirit guides, angels, regular guides, those who have passed that give us protection. Well, on the other side, it is very important to be aware of the negative things that can influence us in any way when we do mediumship. Especially since I am a part of a paranormal group. I go into homes and places that are experiencing the worst of the worst. When somebody says, hey, I can't sleep at night because something's grabbing my ankles, I have to be very educated on why would something grab your ankles? Is this a good spirit trying to get your attention and it's just being cheeky? Is it a negative spirit that is trying to influence by coming through the energy of your feet and give you nightmares? It's important for me as a medium, especially when I go into places, to know what I'm talking about and recognize what I'm looking at. So I'm not attracted to the negative. I am, however, attracted to knowing everything about what I do, because I have to be as effective as possible. And this doesn't just come through reading, it does come through experience. And the only way to get the experience is to be exposed to it. It's like anything else, on the job training. So that's my spiel about that. Yeah, Tammy, they gravitate to the medium or the board. They will gravitate to a normal person using the board because you're unwillingly opening yourself, or unknowingly, not unwillingly, unknowingly opening yourself up to do mediumship. It's very interesting. So I don't have one sitting near me, but I have something right here, and I'll use this. And it's my favorite tool for doing paranormal investigations. Okay, it's right here. I'm gonna grab it. This is the REM pod. Okay, and this right here is the exact same thing as this. Okay, now it will take a little bit more for a spirit to use this because it works on its own and its own energy. So a spirit would have to be a little stronger to work with this, but it is the same thing. And you can understand that because are you a man or are you a man? Yes or no? Yes. Are you between 20 and 30? Yes. Did you die naturally? No. Okay? So watch this. If you're a man, please light up the REM pod. Oh, of course it's not working now. There we go. Okay, thank you. If you were murdered, please light up the REM pod for yes. Right? And then it'll say yes. So this right here is just a device that lets you do the same thing as this. You're communicating with spirits, things that are beyond our, pretty much our natural abilities to perceive. Same, okay? So let's see, here we go. I'm going to read some of your comments. We'll go back and look at some of this because it's a good discussion, and it's really good that we're talking about it because it's going to help everybody who watches this video now and on the replay of this, they'll get an idea of what's going on. Kat, thank you. That was a beautiful answer. You're welcome. It's definitely something I think about, and I always want to be as informative as possible. Dawn says, if it's just cardboard, then how did the spirits come through? Dawn, they use you. Again, that was the REM pod explanation. They just use you. Kim Marie says, I believe in you now. Well, thanks. I think that everybody who talks to me for a little bit understands that I'm not trying to yank their leg or whatever, so to speak, since I was talking about grabbing legs. Brenda Lee says, when they grab my ankles, I'm pulled completely out of the bed and I hit the floor. Can that happen any hour during the night? Yeah, sure. That can happen anytime. They're not pulling me out of bed because I weigh a lot. They're not pulling me. You probably have to be pretty tiny. If something pulls me, it's going to be pretty strong. I do have an interesting story, though. If you guys want, at the end of this, I'll talk to you about something that may or may not have happened. I don't know for sure, but it definitely was an interesting thing that happened at nighttime. No direct I get it. Okay, I want one. What do you want? A REM pod? They're like $150, so get ready to pay up. Yeah, divination. Dawn Marie says it's divination. Divination. That's exactly it. So whether you use those two little copper rods that cross over each other, Ouija board, REM pod, or like, I don't have it, but if you use something with a chain with a weight on the end of it, as a pendulum, that's it. It's the same thing. Oh, and tarot cards. Yeah, exactly. That's something that I love using. Yeah, Brenda says I'm only 103 pounds. Lucky you. I think I was 103 pounds in like a third grade. Yeah, so it's one of those things. So let me tell you a quick story. So I don't remember the investigation that I went on, but I went on an investigation somewhere where they were talking about bad things happening. And those are usually the ones that we go on because nobody calls and says, like, hey, there's a happy ghost in the house. I want you to come check it out. It doesn't normally happen. We went on this investigation, and I believe a night or two later, my son was laying in between myself and my wife in our bed, and in the middle of the night, somehow he got over me, and then landed on the floor. Now, granted, I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, so it is a possibility that he climbed over me and fell, but just the way that it happened, and my wife is a very light sleeper, so one of those things that I would like to think that she would have woke up if she knew he was moving and crawling out of bed. And normally he goes to the end of the bed. If he's sleeping with us, he'll go to the end of the bed and crawl out. He somehow got over me without waking me up and landed on the floor. And when he picked his head up, I had woke up from the thud. I looked at him and he looked very confused, like he was not awake. So it could have been something, maybe picking him up and dropping him. I don't know. And in that same time, I will tell you, I set this up in my room because I thought that there may be something lurking around, and at about, I think, 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, this started going off, and I got up and I said, hey, stop it, and it stopped going off, and then it started going on again, and I said, hey, knock it off, and it stopped again. Then I got up and turned it off because it was getting annoying. But that just shows you that things can interact with us at all times, and they have different ways of doing it. Christina says, the REM, yeah, I mean, you could probably get them used for a little less, but this one, actually, if you see it like this little wire is not how they come. They come with a nice antenna. This is our old one that got beat up and broken by, well, Patrick broke the antenna, but this thing got beat up by a spirit one time, really bad. It got fried out. Let's see, what other kind? I see people are talking about divination. We like runes. I don't know how to use them, so if anybody wants to teach me, I'm all about it. I love to learn it. Hi, Joanne. How are you? I like crystals also. You guys see, I usually have them all. Dawn, you always talk to me about this dead time thing. That's like a made-up thing from TV. Dead time is just what Paranormal State, Ryan Buell, just like something they made up. 3 a.m. Dead time is just what they said for TV. It's like, right now, everybody in my house is asleep except for me and my wife. If she went to sleep, it would be dead time in my house because everybody's asleep except for me, and then I could be able to communicate with them, with the spirits, with no problem, and nobody else interfering with that kind of stuff. Carlene says, do you have any crystal pendulums left? I do. And if anybody's interested in any of them, I'll put some photos up of the ones I have left. I think I have about 6 of them left. And, yeah, you can order one. That would be awesome. Danielle says, our doorbell rings in the middle of the night every now and then. Strange things. It rings in a different tone. Very creepy. That's one of those things I would say, when that happens, pay attention to what time it happens and write it down. Definitely have an electrician check it out and make sure there's no faulty wiring before you jump to paranormal. And then move on from there. That's how we always do investigation. We go with the logical explanation, and then we move it on to the paranormal. So, this has been a really cool conversation. We've covered a lot of ground. Do you guys feel like you know a little bit more about the ZOZO now? And if you don't, please go back to Scotty the NJ Medium's paranormal discussion page, give that a like, and go ahead and look at the content that we posted about that. And when I'm done here, I'm going to post another article on that page. So you have to go over there and give it a like so you can follow along. And then you could read all of this stuff in good how am I trying to say this? You can read about all this in a really good spot and streamlined. It's very well written too, the article that I found. I think it would be very interesting if you want to read about it. Kim Marie says, my daughter seen things when she was little. Yeah, little kids are very, we talk about this a lot here, little kids are very susceptible to seeing spirits and ghosts and stuff. There's no filter for them, so they're just like, hey, you know, I see all these things and it is what it is. So I always tell people to encourage it because you never know if they're going to be develop into something a little more. Maybe they'll be a little more intuitive, empath. I think probably in the future here, what was I going to say? We were going to talk about indigo children, and I think they're called crystal children. They're highly sensitive children that communicate with spirits and stuff. There's a really neat TV TV show from maybe in the last like 5 years with Chip Coffey, and he did about 5 or 6 episodes where they worked with indigo children. I'll see if I can dig it up on YouTube and post it. It's really cool and it's very informative, and I think it'll answer a lot of questions about like children seeing spirits and ghosts and having a little bit of ESP, so to speak. Okay, so I think that'd be really interesting to get into. Kim Marie, I'm sorry if you couldn't get in touch with me. You could always send me a message right here if you need to talk to me about anything. Yeah, that happens a lot. Mom believes in things and Dad doesn't. It's a pretty common dynamic. In my house, we believe pretty much everything, except for Bigfoot. Never seen one. If he knocks on the front door, I'll believe it. Pam says, my parents told me to stop talking about seeing dead people when I was old. Yeah, mine too. Imaginary friends, that's what always gets chalked up to. I did a reading not too long ago, and there was a child in the house that was speaking to an uncle who passed away, and it definitely could have got passed off as an imaginary friend, except for when I spoke to this gentleman, he had all the details of even the layout of the room of the house. Obviously, I've never been in, and I was able to bring some comfort to the family, letting them know that that was the family member interacting with their child. So she very much had that sight to be able to see him physically and hear him very clearly. So once you stop believing, that's when you will stop seeing. So if anything else, we do these discussions and we do the Ouija board, and you head over to, in the description, I have ScottyTheNJMedium.com. If you go over there and start reading, I think that you will find that there are more things that you experience in your everyday life that are, I will say paranormal or supernatural, but they're above what you actually really realize that they are. Things that are happening all around you, and you're being influenced and really don't understand how or why. And there's a lot of that going on in the world now. Joanne says, is being able to see and experience things hereditary? My husband has small little experiences, but my son is more like me and has bigger experiences. I wonder if it's often passed something to him. Yeah, from what I understand and from the things that I've heard, and personally kind of believe, is that it normally is passed along on the mother's side to the daughters. I think that I'm a little bit of an anomaly. If you were to go, and I believe this only because this, if you go Google mediums or psychics in your area and you find the legit, I'll say legit ones, they're going to predominantly be females, and it's very heavy on the female side. And I think that may have something to do with men being very rational thinkers. I am rational. I have to always measure things rationally and then put the paranormal thing up against it and come up with a conclusion. But I also am extremely open to everything in the paranormal world because I just am so immersed in it all of the time. And it doesn't mean that I'm gullible and believe complete nonsense, but it definitely means that I'm open to seeing things and understanding things better than a lot of other men, because I'm not closed off to the idea of there being more beyond what we are right now. Okay, so yes, I do think that it's hereditary and it could get passed down, and it's also something that I think that you can open up to in the future. So it doesn't matter if you're 5 years old or 85 years old. You will always have the ability to say, I believe now. I can open myself up to believe bigger, better things, and then you can start having these experiences and do things maybe not quite on the exact level as I can, but maybe you can do other things better than me. Maybe you're more of an empath and you can feel people's emotions more deeply than I can. That's really one of those big things, and I think that everybody has a different gift, and you just have to figure out what yours is. So yeah, that's hereditary. Hereditary natural, and then you can build on it. Christina says, my son held a full conversation with my mother-in-law at her funeral. He was 8 at the time. Yeah, he probably was just talking to her, enjoying it. I bet you it helped him cope better with losing grandma too. So she probably was doing that specially for him. Dawn says, my nephew's seen a ghost in my sister's house in Keyport. This little boy called the baby ghost. He's now 15 and still like, yeah, we talked about that, Dawn. Tell him to give me a call. I'll take a walk through the house and see if there's anybody still hanging out. Synchronicities, Tammy, are a big thing. We could talk about that. That should be another topic for another night. Remember that. people don't believe, so you don't say it. Me, I don't care if anybody believes me or not. Here I am on Facebook talking about everything I believe. Rich, yep, I'll bring you something, buddy, no problem. Rich, everybody, there. Rich Salvini is on our PARS team. He's one of our investigators. Great dude. Catherine says, I'm in Keyport now. They also have Underground Railroad. Catherine, Keyport is very, very active. There's a lot of paranormal stuff going on there. Tammy says, we don't have very many men psychics. That's in Washington. Yep, here either, where I live. Yep, Keyport is haunted. Kim says, my kids wouldn't be upset. They would want to talk about things. And it's important to me to tell them I believe them. Yep, always. Everything. Just nurture them. Nicole Knight says, I had 3 different medium tell me I'm considered a channel. So that's not a completely different thing, but it's in the same world, but it's different. I don't let ghosts or spirits channel with me. The closest it comes is like, if you, again, I'm going to refer to this Friday night video for a while. If you go back and watch that Friday night Ouija video, that was the closest anything's gotten to channeling with me in a very long time. That guy literally like jumped on top of me to get his point across. So to me, it's very, it messes with your energy a lot, so I don't like it. Some people are very good at it and very natural. My friend Kate, who I talk about, who does light language activation, she's a natural channel. So it doesn't wipe her out one bit. She does it well. She does this crazy thing. I'm going to interview her one time on a Tuesday, and we're going to talk about it, what she does, because it's so amazing. So for the people who are going to go out tonight and try to use a board tonight in the future, when they meet an aggressive argumentative spirit on the board, what should they do? Good question. If you feel uncomfortable, it's like anything else. You have the option to stop. All you have to say is, and this is what I would say out loud, I am not going to speak to you. It's time for you to leave. And then if you're using a Ouija board, right across the bottom, there's the goodbye. It's there for a reason. Scroll the planchette across it and say goodbye. And then put the board away. Don't try to continue using it, because you're still going to be inviting spirit in to talk. Say, I'm done, and put it away for the night. Tammy, right away. Christina says, never knew that about Keyport. Yeah, as a matter of fact, Keyport is right next to Union Beach, where Stubby's is, and I'm still working on doing some things over there. We're going to be doing a ghost hunt over there, so get ready for that. Stubby's Deli After Dark is a Facebook page. Go give that a like if you are in the area and you want to go do some ghost hunting. I'm about to wrap this up because it is 10 o'clock and I gotta get moving. Let's see here. Okay, real quick about Dan. Joanne asked, any updates about the lady with the man named Dan in her house? Yeah, she hit me up this morning with a couple messages. She was sitting at a desk working on something, and drips of water came out of nowhere, and were hitting the thing. She said that she searched everywhere for a water source, and nothing she could find did anything for the leak. So she couldn't find a natural explanation for it. Very strong hauntings oftentimes have unknown water sources. As a matter of fact, Stubby's Deli is one of the spirit told me very clearly. Okay, I think we're back now. That was weird. I lost it. My connection just went out as we started talking about this, so you know. And it never goes out. So anyway, I'm going to finish this video up because it's about time for me to go, like I said. But yeah, that's what's going on there. And if anything else, I will come up with that for you. So listen, if you want to continue the discussion about any of this stuff, go over to Scotty the NJ Medium's Paranormal Discussion page. Give it a like, ask to join. We'll add you to the group. And then all of you guys, all of you ladies, all you gentlemen can go there and discuss to your heart's desire. I jump in there often. Tammy's over there, a moderator. There's some other people who are very well versed in all of this stuff, and they'll answer your questions also. So go over there. It's a really great, safe place to go do that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for joining. If you haven't yet, just do me a favor at the end of the video. Just click share. I had a really great time talking with everybody as usual. Please do me a favor and spread the word. Again, I'm always available for readings, phone readings, and we'll be here on Friday doing some more Ouija and some other kind of cool stuff. I think I'm going to come up with some other stuff to do then with the Ouija board, so we don't fill the whole hour with it. We'll do some more cool stuff, I promise. Thanks again. It was a blast. Thanks for asking me so many great questions and making a fun hour. I will see you on Friday at 9. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.